Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your time and your interest in the subject of PDF and open source. If I may introduce myself just a little bit, my name is Francois Fernandes. It's a classical German name with almost no accent. Now, I'm a senior solution architect working for Digital Frontiers, and I've been in the area of PDF for about 15 years. My first contact with PDF was actually the first software that I wrote in Java. So instead of doing a classical hello world, my first software was a PDF parser. So I went to a lot of pain to get to that point. And I would like to share a little bit of my experience that I gathered throughout the years and what things I've seen in the area of PDF and open source. Throughout, and one thing that is interesting to me is I would like to know how many of you are actually using PDF in your or not PDF, open source projects in your PDF workflow. And you will have a poll on your screen starting right now asking exactly that question. And I'm interested to see how many of you are actually already using an open source solution. So PDF and open source. I challenged myself to give a little, at least some small kind of overview of what exists in the ecosystem and what you can use, what you can achieve. What I would like to do is to have a look at a particular use case. Our use case should be, or will be for the moment, the communication between a company and their customer. And the channels are pretty broad. There are many different ways on how we're going to communicate or are able to communicate with customers and back to the company itself. I would like to focus on at least a relatively simple workflow. That workflow is going to be consisting of, on one hand, we want to generate PDF documents for many reasons, being it letters, being it invoices, being anything you could think that you would like your customer to inform your customer about. And of course, we could, as versatile as PDF is, we could send that via email or via print it out and send it via mail. Printing is not the coolest thing in the world, so we will ignore that for the moment. But what about the way back? How do customers communicate with us? So in the companies that I've been working in and for, especially in Germany, the most typical way of customers getting back is actually via letter. So something printed out that has to be scanned to go into the digitalized processes within the organization. And of course, one of the most important things that we would like to do at that point is to OCR that document, because if you only have pixel data, it is not really fun to work with that. But what about the more modern customers that actually transfer their documents and their data via email? Well, that provides a lot of additional challenges. For example, if I have a Word document attached, and I certainly do not want my Word documents in with further processing in any way because they're not very reliable, I have to do conversion. What about if a PDF is attached to an email? I should do some kind of validation to check whether or not it is actually viable. And from that point on, we can synchronize those processes back again. And one important thing, and one of the reasons why we're actually doing OCR, is that we would like to have text extraction, for example, for full text indexing, or for simply navigating within a document. If you've already been faced with a large contract, you don't want to search through every page of that contract just for searching one single thing. And the last step, obviously, is viewing those documents. So now let's have a look at which areas we can achieve what with open source. First of all, let's start with the generation of documents. That's the most initial step. When we generate documents, we have a lot of options on how we can do it. It obviously depends on volume. For example, printing, virtual printing in that case, is something that you could do on a single application basis when you're preparing, for example, a copy for your customer. Of course, one of the most important things is actually Office software. If you're writing letters, if you're having any kind of other information assembled in Office documents, those should and could be generated into PDF and sent out. And then there are two very interesting types or kinds of generation. I'm calling the programmatic generation, although a lot of people will argue with me about the terminology I've used here. So you have to accept what I'm using today. I'm very sorry for you. And the other thing is the declarative generation. We will go into a little bit of detail on what that actually means. One thing though, printing is not something that I'm going to be covering today because, let's be honest, most modern operating systems already have PDF printing capabilities built right in. So there's no need to do any special thing. It just works. We don't have to take care for anything. It just works. So we can check that off. It's done. But then the first thing is, what about Office software, Office documents? And some of you might already know, or I suspect that a lot of people already know, that there is quite a reliable Office suite out there. Initially, it was called Open Office, and meanwhile, it has been split into LibreOffice and Open Office. And from my personal feeling, I would say Open Office is dead. LibreOffice is actually still being there. What is LibreOffice? LibreOffice is just an Office suite. It is comparable to what you have with Microsoft Office. And the cool thing, you have all the most important tools. You have the word processing, you have spreadsheet support, you have presentations, and you have even more applications, for example, doing math equations and stuff like that, or drawings. But the most interesting thing is that LibreOffice has a very good native PDF writing support built right in. And I'm saying that it is a pretty decent PDF writing, as I already stated earlier. I have been writing a PDF parser, so you can trust me. I know which software really does a crappy job in writing PDF documents and which ones don't. LibreOffice is actually one of the better ones that you can rely on. So I have a quick overview about LibreOffice. From my point of view, it is a mature Office suite. It is capable of generating PDFA, which is particularly important for, at least for me, because you can generate reliable documents even for the future. And you're keeping documents that are actually future-proof. And then, interestingly enough, it is mostly compatible with other Office products. The only downside being, as it is not the other Office product, there are some compatibility issues from time to time. So you will be facing some subtle differences, but most of the time, it should be a smooth experience. So that's pretty easy, and it just works. I promise that I'm going to talk a little bit about the next thing, programmatic and declarative generation. This is really important to understand because now it's going to into the area of generating mass amounts of documents and automatically generating those. The other two processes that we've been talking about before were pretty much manual. And there are two ways on how to express a PDF document. The programmatic way pretty much resembles how the PDF internal structure actually works. And to give you an example of what that means, I will do an example of how the PDF structure internally works when rendering the page with a high-level, non-existing, self-defined instruction set that is just meant for visual purposes. Let's see, for example, we want to on the left hand, we have a page, and on the right hand, we have the instruction set. And let's say we want to write a caption. The instructions that would be required are actually that. We have to set a font, we have a font size, we have to say which position that string is going to be shown, and then we have to have the instruction that the text should be written. In our case, caption, causing that thing to be written on the page, to be visible on the page. That is something like that is actually what PDF is doing. But that has some not limits, but things you should be careful with. In particular, let's look at the following example. This example is we change the font size to something smaller, we move to a new line, and in that case, we write a pretty long sentence. And as the sentence already states, it will not be fitting on one line. What happens if you're just putting that instruction into a PDF document? Well, that's pretty simple. It just overruns the page. So you have full control over how and where stuff is going to be printed on your PDF document if you're going with a programmatic way of generating your PDF document, but you have to take care of a lot of things and keep track of the position and lay out all the things yourself. And this is where we are going to be talking now about the declarative thing and why that could help in such cases. Again, let's use the same example. We want to create the caption, but instead of providing explicit and specific coordinates, we're actually using a notation that states, I want to have a block for which the contents will be of the following size. And what a library or tool has to do in that case then is to lay out a block and decide where it fits on the page. And then it has to decide if the caption or if the text actually matches into that area and dynamically extend if possible. And the same thing can be done for our next statement. Again, it is the long sentence. And the interesting thing here is we only state that this is a long sentence. We don't care about line wrapping on anything. It just wraps automatically. That's the basic concept that's used in HTML. It's a layout engine, basically. So this is the difference between those two kinds. So let's have a look at one possible implementation for the programmatic way. That's Apache PDF Box. It is a pretty common library, and you have to forgive me. I'm pretty biased. I'm loving or living in the Java ecosystem, so I'm leaning a little bit towards the Java libraries. PDF Box has a pretty simple programming model, but it reflects exactly what I've been stating before. You have to position your text and your content explicitly on the PDF page. If it overruns the page, you're screwed. You have to take care of that yourself. But if for some reasons you only have to position things at a specific place, it is perfectly fine. I always have a little slide that summarizes the actual library, so you can have a look later in the presentation slides once you get your hold of it. Let's look at the declarative option. And there's one particularly interesting toolkit, but this is Apache FOB, and it uses a technology or specification, let's say, called XSLFO, the Extensible Style Sheet Language Formatting Objects. What does that mean? Granted, it has a little bit of a steeper learning curve, but let's try to give it a shot, to have a little overview of how it actually works. The basic concept is pretty simple. You always start with some kind of data. In our example, it is a person, and it is an XML input. And we combine that with an Excel style sheet. XSL is basically a template processor, so you put input into that, and you get another XML document as a result. And that is done through an XSLT processor. And in our case, we will generate a specific notation called FO, the formatting objects. That's a FO document. And the result, the FO document, is something that we put into FOB, and FOB is in response of generating exactly the resulting PDF document. It takes a while to get used to it, but it has a lot of potential. It allows easy implementation of batch processing, but you have to get used to it. Again, just a quick summarization. And one interesting option that I wanted to show is that you can have a programmatic approach and declarative in the same moment. For that, Itex is a great example. Itex is actually available in Java and .NET, so serving multiple ecosystems, which is a nice thing. And the declaration is very simple and straightforward. And instead of positioning things, absolutely, you're putting in paragraphs and other structural elements, and Itex will take care of laying out the actual content. And the cool thing, it is, as I said, it is extremely mature. It is declaratively, or has declarative support, although it's implemented in Java, the actual application code. And there's commercial support available, and it works for Java and .NET. So looking at the time, I have to speed a little bit up. It is okay. It's okay because the scan part is anyway something that we're going to skip here, because scanning is highly dependent on what kind of software or hardware you're actually using. So it's pretty hard to make a general assumption. But the interesting thing is actually OCR. OCR is based, finally, in the end, based on an input image. And this is something that we can expect for any kind of scanning solution, but there is always going to be an input image. And there is a neat little tool called Tesseract. Tesseract is actually a project that is pretty substantively supported by Google and used throughout their projects. And Tesseract brings a lot of interesting capabilities. For example, you can choose different output types depending on your use case. If you want to have only the actual text of a document without even changing the document or generating a PDF, you can do it right away, and you get an output in the form of the raw text. Another option is to generate a markup, HROCR, which is a markup language which contains the positioning information and some additional information about the actual layout of the page. And this is an important step because it provides us with the foundation for what we actually want to achieve. That's to have a searchable PDF. So in that case, Tesseract just generates a PDF document based on the input image and lays out the OCR text on top. It is a great thing. It works pretty well. It has its limits because it does require training data, which is provided, but it is not perfect in any situation. So you always have have to check whether your input works or not. Let's go ahead with one of the most frustrating topics, validation and conversion. Validation is okay, and it's in particular, it's something that we at the PDF Association actually love pretty much, because we are hosting or supporting the Vera PDF project. And it has an active community, and it is supported by our members in many ways. And it has an extensive coverage of validating PDF A1, A2, and A3, which is the foundation of what a typical input workflow should be built upon. How does it work? Pretty much very simple. There's a desktop application to run your validation. You pick a file, you choose which kind of profile you want to run against, and you will be facing a report as the result, stating exactly what is wrong with the document and what should be changed. And even better, that can be used in batch processing. For example, using the command line interface that does exactly the same thing, but on a CLI basis. It is also possible to integrate that directly into your application. So with validation out of the way, and we have a pretty good working solution, there's one thing that is still open. We have to discuss what is actually the best open source conversion solution, and is there something available? I wanted to just put that on a scale. And my personal scale, if for such solutions, is basically it depends and none, because it's not really easy to provide a one-size-fits-all solution. It depends means, for me, it depends on the actual input. For example, let's see, if you have Office document, one option would be to use LibreOffice. You can use LibreOffice in a batch mode to convert something like that to PDF. You can use ImageMagick to convert images to PDF, but then it stops. And you have to extend that with additional tools for example, HTML, emails, etc. There's so many document formats out there, and there's no real complete and well-working solution, at least to my understanding and my feeling, that just does it for all. It is complicated, and this is the reason why you will see so many commercial converters, and why those are, in my opinion, still superior to any open source project that I've seen to this date. What's next? Now that we have done conversion, probably, we have some kind of valid document, we have OCR to the document, then it comes to text extraction. And text extraction, there's one go-to tool, which is called Apache Tika. Because it's not only capable of handling PDF, but other formats, but in particular PDF, it does a very great job. It is a great library. But I have to say that I'm absolutely not an expert in Apache Tika, but the positive thing is I'm pretty sure that he certainly knows a lot more about Tika. So you should join at October 20th if you're interested in text extraction using Apache Tika. That leaves us with the last major thing, with viewing of documents. What are our options? Our option, in particular for viewing, there are many viewing applications out there, open source viewing applications like the XPDF. So the Linux ecosystem has a lot of PDF viewers actually. GNOME has its own one, KDE has its own one, and other desktop managers as well have their own one. But I want to focus on two very major players in that area. That is, on one hand, PDF.js. Some of you might have already heard of PDF.js. The interesting thing about PDF.js is it is the natively integrated PDF viewing solution into Firefox. So the Firefox, if you're viewing a PDF document, that is actually done with a completely JavaScript viewer. And it has a pretty nice viewer user interface, having multiple display options, etc. And it works very, very well. It has an active community because it is Firefox, but it struggles with some advanced PDF features. For example, a lot of the pre-press stuff is actually not really working very well, or takes a lot of memory, or is performance-wise very, very poor. So it's basically facing the limits of JavaScript. But for a lot of documents, typical business documents, it works pretty well. One other option is actually, again, coming from a browser, is Google Chrome. Or no, to be more precise, it's actually not Google Chrome, because Chrome itself is not open source, but is based upon Chromium, which is open source. And Chromium itself doesn't really have the PDF viewing right built in. It uses PDF View. PDF View is a library, a pretty well-made library and reliable library, but is used in Chrome for viewing PDF documents. And additionally, not only viewing, but to some extent, they are generating PDFs using that library. And the best thing, because otherwise it wouldn't be on the list for today, PDFium is actually open source. It is implemented in C++ and can be used in your own applications, and you can extend it in the way that you want and implement it or integrate it in the ways you want. And there is an active community because it is used by one of the most widespread browsers out there, and is widely available because it's used by one of the most widespread browsers out there. So now let's have a look at our landscape, our process.
We're almost out of time, Francois.
I'm aware, and I'm running really fast. I'm just doing the checks. We have a lot of stuff for generating documents. We have the biggest question mark, which is validation and conversion. Although validation can be solved, conversion is a pain in so many cases. And we have a solution for OCR. We have certainly a solution for text extraction, and viewing is also no problem. So that leaves me at the moment with one open question to you all. What is your next PDF project? And thank you for listening. So I'm now open for questions as long as we have any additional time.
We certainly do. Thank you very much, Francois. Okay, we'll now begin to answer the questions submitted during the presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. We do have several questions for you, Francois. First of all, a couple want to know, will the slides be available for download?
They will be right after the presentation. I will make my very best to make them available as fast as possible.
Okay. And we'll help you take care of that. Okay, and so you did talk about PDFium. One of the questions did pertain to that. Do any of the libraries that you mentioned support PDF 2.0?
I know that a lot of those libraries are actually starting to do implementation, but the extent to which they already support PDF 2.0 features is not something that I can state right now. And it certainly depends on which kind of features you actually would like to, are expecting.
Well, the next question is actually about that, specifically rich media annotations is the point of interest, I guess, to the same questioner.
I'm not sure at the moment. I would have to check. So okay. I know that the PDF Box guys, for example, which are also providing a viewer, I actually already am trying to implement that. And PDFium, I think, as well. But that we should check.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have any open source recommendations in terms of converting HTML to PDF?
That's a hard one. I was thinking about integrating one, but that is a pretty hard moving target. There was in the past a toolkit called WK HTML to PDF. That is a toolkit that was based on WebKit and used the WebKit engine to actually render PDF documents right after, based off that. But that project did go away. Then other projects started to occur, and so the question can only be answered for a particular moment in time. And I have to say that I didn't look in the last 3 months which was the most up-to-date solution. But as Chromium is the most interesting thing here, you should be looking at something that is actually working in the area of Chromium and using the Chrome engine to do the rendering.
Okay. Do any of the PDF generators you mentioned, do they generate usable PDF UA files?
Apache FOB does a pretty good job, actually. I've seen FOB documents with UA, but there has been some tweaking at least. Itex, as far as I know, do a lot in the PDF UA area. So if you're really depending on UA, you should be looking at Itex, I think.
Okay. And this question here, how scalable is the PDF EM software? Does it run into performance issues with large sets of documents or with notably long or complex PDFs?
PDF EM in particular?
Yeah.
The performance of PDF EM is pretty good, I have to say. I had some documents with around 5,000 or 6,000 pages. There was a little performance penalty for sure, but it wasn't that noticeable. So there are limits, of course, but you shouldn't typically reach those limits.
Okay. All right. Well, those are the questions that we have here. I guess there's one other. Did you actually really build a universal document conversion by yourself, as your presentation strongly implies?
Well, I tried to, and I can really say that it is a major pain because again, that is a moving target. You have to incorporate different tools for different jobs. So one thing you could do is try to integrate every kind of document format yourself. That's just insane. If you're thinking about implementing something like support for Word or something like that, you're going to die someday or another. And I tried to incorporate many different tools into one single solution, and it has always been hard. And if you have a look out in the wild, there are a lot of PDF solutions or PDF conversion solutions, open source as well, which try to do the same thing. They run for some months until the owner gets frustrated and just drops it because there are so many bug reports that this document is not working, that is not working, that is not working. It's just a pain in the backside. And that's actually the reason why there are so many commercial solutions, because you have to pay people to do that.